being an idiot and now being a person in recovery.
I know the path of being an idiot quite well.
I guess you were a golfer at one point, but I haven't heard that much about golfing from you. I just read that in your bio.
Yeah, it's hard to make tee times when you're hungover. So exactly. I figured if I could look in the mirror and feel good and look good, then I wouldn't need to drink. And that was, of course, bullshit. Yeah, and that was one of the things that was my problem is I could always say, I'm not the guy under the bridge. I don't have a problem. I'm not, shooting heroin. I'm not, homeless. I'm not this and that. So that I could easily, that was something I can use to convince myself that I didn't have a big problem.
Hey there, and welcome to the recovery crew here at Deep Waters Recovery Programs. Today we have Wes Shephard. He's kind of a personality. Can you have a personality on podcasts and YouTube? And he's mildly famous, Wes Shephard. But the combination of having become vulnerable and owning that he has this wonderful gift called addiction, and he's got a great story. Anyway, he's a really fun guy, humble and open. So we'll both we'll have fun. We're going to have fun today, but I think you guys will have a lot of fun listening to it. So, Wes Shephard, and yes, you please like us and share this podcast. The video version is on YouTube, and we're on all of the social media platforms and all the podcast platforms that you listen to. So we really appreciate you engaging with us, and a lot of the posts that we put out there invite your participation. So please become part of this movement, which is about launching into a vibrant life of recovery and healing trauma. And then we get this freedom that just comes, and we find ourselves doing our creative bliss. So that's what we're up to. Let's do it together. The Deep Waters Recovery Program is a 10-hour per week opportunity to do just what I said, but to launch into your life. A lot of the folks that come in there are dealing with addiction or depression or anxiety or some train wreck of some kind, but that's not everybody. There's a lot of folks that just want to get some fire under their life. We also do the Deep Waters Intensives. It's a 3-day. If you go to the website, deepwatersrecovery.com, you'll find out more than you could ever want to know. So I think that's it. Let's get this thing started. Enjoy the show with Wes Shephard. All right, look at that. Wow, dashing. I've never seen you in black before. Black is good. That is Wes. This is Wes Shephard, and I'm so glad you're here, brother. Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, black is very slimming, which is why all my shirts are black. So, thanks for having me, Dr. Bob. It's good to see you.
Well, I'm glad you're here, Wes. There's so many pieces to Wes. I don't even know where to begin. But the main one is he has chosen to live a life of sobriety and to help other people find that path. Because you and I know, Wes, the anxiety, the mess, and the chaos, and also the peace that comes when we find support and say really unheard of things like I need help.
Yeah.
I was taught never to say I need help or that I've got something I need to work on, and I don't know.
You don't want to be a pussy, right?
That's right. You don't want to be a pussy. That's or a limp wrist or a a wimp. Or my dad had an actual fairly long list of references that I came away from knowing. Be tough. That's the top list, and do not ever look like you are weak. But anyway, recovery sort of requires something different. And Wes is kind of a tough guy, smart guy, all that kind of. And I've watched him surrender, and I admire you, Wes. So I'm glad you're here, and your message, your story is valuable for a lot of people to hear. So here's my intro of Wes. He's from Virginia. I don't know anybody else from Virginia. What is Virginia other than the place where Washington, D.C. is sort of in the center of it? But I don't know.
My Virginia shirt, if you can see it too, that's pretty.
Is it? Cool. Yep. I know that shape. I know the shape of Virginia, and I know it's near D.C., but I don't know what else is there. All right. And I guess you were a golfer at one point, but I haven't heard that much about golfing from you. I just read that in your bio.
Yeah, it's hard to make tea times when you're hungover. So
And then you made an idiot out of yourself at the University of Kentucky, if I read that right, and then kind of shaped up just enough to graduate at George Mason, an English degree. Wow, are you like because you listen to Wes a lot of the time, he sounds like he's still in the bar room, but there must be an articulate poet in there somewhere.
Well, I write good, so
so you look good on paper.
But the reason I'm an English major is because I can write far better than I can take tests. So that's the main reason. And I felt like I owed it to my parents to get a degree after all the shit I put them through at Kentucky.
But you had more shit to put them through subsequently, didn't you?
Oh yeah, it was just beginning.
You weren't done. No. But anyway, Wes, a little bit like me, I was able to be pretty functional and creative, and created a bunch of pretty dynamic stuff, even in the midst of the wacko. Wes produced a lot of different kind of video projects and film projects with National Geographic, Discovery Channel, the Smithsonian. And actually, with all of the different things that you did in production, I think I read it right that you found behind the camera is where your bliss is. And I know that you've done a lot of documentaries, and you also had a comedy. I've never seen this in writing before. A comedy drinking troupe. Yes, called Who Do You Know Here?
Yes.
And actually, the main thing that I've known about you, other than just because we're brothers in recovery, is you're one of the guys on Hard Factor, which is one of the Barstool products. It's a really well-known podcast, and I think some of those guys were also in that comedy drinking troupe, right? If I have that right. So maybe
all of them.
Yeah. So maybe we'll hear more. And he's a dad of a cool 10-year-old. And I can't keep going. I can't tell his whole story for him here, but he's a juicy character. I'm so glad you're here, Wes. This is the Recovery Crew, and we get folks on here that really understand the mess and the beauty of recovery. So if you wouldn't mind telling your story a little bit here, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, sir. I guess begin. I grew up in a really good family back in Virginia, upper middle class. Never wanted for anything. Had a moped in middle school. That I kind of tell myself that I helped pay for a little bit, which I know isn't the truth. Never wanted for anything. My parents were. The family was dysfunctional in its own way, but we were pretty normal on the outside. My dad's an awesome man. My mom's a real sweet lady. I have a younger sister, so it wasn't like you could look at us and be like, oh well, there something's going on there. So that's Reston is where I grew up. It's kind of a weird place. It's like a planned community, one of the first planned communities in America. So wide streets, little shopping centers everywhere. It's kind of like utopia, like big ice skating rink in the middle of town, like a Norman Rockwell painting or something. So it's a little. Wasn't there
a Jim Carrey movie that looked a little bit like that?
Yeah, something like that. I forget the name of it. But it was a great place to grow up, like you said, just outside of DC. But there was not a whole lot to do there. So in high school, that's when my first experience drinking was a bunch of guys came over to my house and we stole a bunch of my parents' liquor, and we ended up getting this one particular person extremely drunk, and they had to go to the hospital. So that was my first whoa, this stuff's powerful kind of experience. This stuff's dangerous kind of experience. I think I was 7th grade, 6th grade when that happened. But then, eventually that started, instead of, stealing it to just for the sake of that, we started, drinking it. And, I was always a shy kid, grew up, overweight, got made fun of, bullied, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of went into this shell growing up, and lacked a lot of confidence because, if I opened my mouth, I was bringing attention to myself. And God forbid I did that, because then I'd get ridiculed or made fun of or whatever. Always trying to fit in, always trying to do the cool thing, wear the cool clothes, just, be a chameleon. Whatever I could be accepted as, that's what I was going to be. But I stuffed a lot of stuff down. Eventually I started just kind of being a recluse. I would sit at home. My mom would come home and yell at me, "Why are you sitting at home watching TV? Why don't you go outside and play?" I'm like, "Well, because it fucking sucks out there. That's why." I get made fun of. So,
but it's not something you actually were able to say or articulate probably to them.
No. I mean, they knew I still am super sensitive guy. Super sensitive back then. I would cry, being made fun of. Words really hurt me. They still do. So, it was tough for a while, in school. Eventually, kind of went through puberty, grew up a little bit, got out of that kind of phase, got a girlfriend, but then, that's when the drinking started. And that's when that's how I became confident, started drinking, and then I could really let myself go. And it was a lot of overcompensating too with the drinking. I became, a fucking asshole. That was just kind of the identity that was put on me. And that's the identity that I rolled with, because I was accepted like that. Everyone thought it was funny. Everyone thought it was cool. So I was just a dick when I was drinking.
Yeah. One of the ways we talk about it is alcohol is a really good medication for shame.
Yeah.
It's a really good numbing of shame that we can just sort of keep going when we've got a body full of self-loathing, right?
Exactly. So, I wasn't confident with myself, but the alcohol gave me that confidence. I could speak up. I could, be goofy. I could be funny. And, there was certain people that I could be around without being drunk, and that would come out. But in public, a lot of social anxiety, a lot of fear of judgment, all that good stuff that just makes someone go into a shell. And alcohol was my way to get over that. That's what it was. And that continued up until, I went to rehab, 71 days ago or however long it was. And that was just, my life. And it eventually the drinking, it was fun at first, of course. It was partying, college, I a little too much smoking weed. I mean, the guys in college, we had a big 5-foot bong that we'd hit every day and just like get comatose on the couch. And then, I failed out of school because I was just doing nothing except for drinking and getting high. I was an asshole when I drank in high school. And that was my identity. So, yeah.
But we're also, I do remember that we were also talking about alcohol and the way that it kind of medicated the not feeling good about ourselves. And it gave you an opportunity to kind of get out there, even if it wasn't pretty.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, looking back on it now, there was definitely a lot of, depression and, more than just regular anxiety happening, social anxiety, all that good stuff. So yeah, alcohol was it for me. And then also marijuana, even though I didn't really even like weed, I kind of just did it because it was just another form of not the normal thinking. Just anything to take me away from normal thinking was great. So yeah, so that was high school. And then college, more the same. I was definitely not ready. I was definitely not mature enough to go to college. So, getting into a big party school like University of Kentucky, just the inevitable happened where I got involved with some guys that were, pledging to a fraternity. And it was just drinking all day. They had a house. I was living on campus, but they had a house. So I could just go there. I could sleep there, sun up to sundown, drinking, not going to class. And that was pretty much the way it went for a long time. I didn't really get into any other drugs in college. I messed with, some like Ritalin, Adderall type stuff, but I was always scared to do like, the hard stuff like cocaine or anything like that. I waited a little while in order to get into that. Yeah. I paced myself a little bit.
You had a plan. You had a very, very good, like us gamblers, we say we had a system.
Right. Exactly. It wasn't the disease progressing at all. It was my own plan. So, so after college, I was such an asshole, after I eventually got yanked out of Kentucky, spent a year doing manual labor, hauling drywall, showing up to haul drywall at 6 a.m. hungover is not fun. And even that wasn't enough to keep me from drinking. And, a bunch of those guys were all heroin addicts and doing a bunch of crazy shit. Luckily I didn't get into any of that, but I was around it. all the time. And then, eventually went back to school. I was living at home with my parents, but I was such a bear, I guess, to be at home that my dad literally paid for me to move into an apartment in the same town. So I wasn't living at home. So that was really good too. It was a party apartment. Well, I was living with one of my buddies who just graduated. He had his shit together and he had graduated college. I was still in college, but living in an apartment with him. But I was able to pull it together, like you said, for a little while, graduated and, got a career, but it just continued. I was always pretty good at clutching the wheel and making sure that it didn't get super out of control. But if I could, if I had any opening, I was taking advantage of it and just getting shit faced. I mean, I almost got fired a couple times from my job in production, showing up to work drunk a couple times. Every time we'd go on a shoot that there was a party that night, waking up hungover, never my best. I was never my best. That was consistent. So then, started the comedy group with some buddies. We were doing short films. I knew how to operate the camera. I knew how to do all the editing. So I kind of was, brought on for that aspect. And we lived in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we partied and we made short films. And that went on for a while. It was great. It was a lot of fun. But at some point in there, the drinking turned from fun and party to just, I noticed, I was the last one up. I never got enough. People were like, I'm tapping out. Well, I wasn't tapping out until everything was gone. That was my kind of deal. And then moved to Austin, had my son, literally within a year after moving here. I could, when he eventually was old enough to stay with me half the time, I could reel it in when he was there. I would maintenance, with, a few beers here and there just to kind of keep the edge off. But as soon as he was gone, it was full throttle. I was basically Jekyll and Hyde, went with him. So, it was bad. And, my girlfriend who I'm still with now, she was, eventually was just, became too much. I mean, it's just, she was dealing with her own stuff and, she, got me into rehab. I was something that I talked to you about. I reached out to you a number of years ago, of course. And you of course tried to get me into going. And I was, I'll just work out. I'll do it. I'll eat better. I'll do all the shit that the book literally makes fun
eating
of,
better.
essentially.
Eating better. That addresses the disease sufficiently for guys like you and me. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I figured if I could look in the mirror and feel good and look good, then I wouldn't need to drink. And that was, of course, bullshit. Because I still needed to drink because I had a lot more than just that going on. So
and I do remember you show up pretty good, man. I mean, you don't look like the guy under the bridge, and probably never do, right?
Right. Yeah. And that was one of the things that was my problem is I could always say, I'm not the guy under the bridge. I don't have a problem. I'm not, shooting heroin. I'm not, homeless. I'm not this and that. So that I could easily, that was something I can use to convince myself that I didn't have a big problem. And I'm sure, many people listening probably have done the same thing.
Yeah. And when waking up miserable, I remember this, waking up miserable every day takes a little bit to get the face on and take a breath and then muscle through it, right? Day after day after day after day. I mean, that's a certain kind of bridge. That's a bridge in itself.
Yeah. And then, go to sessions with you and lie to you, and, all that good stuff. So, did that, went back out for essentially a year after we kind of stopped seeing, the sessions and then, it just got worse like it does. And, started seeing you again. But at this point I was not giving a fuck about anything. I started this podcast for Barstool. It gave me a little bit of structure, but still not enough because it was still a party scene. We were making jokes and laughing and we were at my house so I could drink. And, it just progressed. And, it got to a point where I was just isolating, whenever I could, I would isolate and drink in my garage and do, Adderall to not be a complete mess. And that was it. That was all I would do for a number of days. And then when I had to get it back together, I would. And, that was just how I lived for years.
Yeah.
And it was fucking miserable. It was sad. It was depressing. It was not fun. I remember I had a stint of about 4 months of sobriety right before I went into rehab, where I was just clutching the wheel, didn't have a sponsor, was just going to meetings. That was what I thought would keep me sober, is going to meetings. And it worked for, a little bit, but I was always unhappy still. I was more unhappy, wanting to drink and feeling, the RID, and eventually
that's one of the mythologies. You referred to our sessions. Anybody that's around me these days knows I'm pretty much doing coaching more than therapy, because therapy in its traditional sense is not going to do much with addiction. I think anybody that's been around long enough knows that we're dealing with something deeper, pretty deep, and it takes a huge intervention of some kind of impact. And I think I remember I started making back in when I probably had the same speech was, all right, you got 3 choices. Go to one of the few treatment centers that will launch you into a life of sobriety, and it's going to be a lot. I mean, that's a big commitment. It might be 60 and 90 days. Or the other thing is, you could craft a program where you're pretty much in meetings most of the day, and you get a sponsor, and you actively work the steps. And then the third option was just go drink some more and get some more pain. And I think you chose something, but you kept going to meetings. And wow, that is unusual to keep doing the craziness and going to meetings, because they say AA ruins your ability to enjoy drinking at all. So that was really a choice for a particular kind of misery, Wes.
Well, I wasn't drinking and going to meetings at the same time. I was just, of course, I took your advice to go get more pain the first time, which I did, and I thought that was great advice, of course. But then, once I made an effort to stop, I wasn't doing it for me. I just kind of, I felt a little bit forced to do it, and that eventually crumbled because I just didn't want to be doing it. I was doing it for somebody else. And it crumbled. COVID hit, all these other excuses that I can name that made me drink, but it was the disease. I eventually just found myself cracking a beer in my kitchen and not knowing what the fuck I was doing. And that's when it really started going down. And then, then rehab hit. And here I am now.
What's the, just point a little bit more to what was the misery, particular misery that helped you to turn that corner to for a guy like you to surrender? What was that particular misery?
It was thinking about killing myself every day. Was probably the biggest thing. I remember when COVID hit and everyone was going out and buying guns, and I went out and I was like, I need a gun, and I went out and did some gun shopping. And at some point during that, I realized a gun in my house is the last fucking thing I need. And that really scared the shit out of me. That before all those thoughts were like, I'd never do it. I have a son. I couldn't do that to him. Blah, 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 blah. I'd think about doing it later down the line. I'd be like, maybe when he's 22, 23, and he's okay, then I can kill myself. That was fucked up. That was a fucked up thought. And I was like, I don't want to think about that anymore. I don't want to wake up every day and think about suicide. And even if I can convince myself that it was never going to happen, it was never going to happen. That's how it starts, right? So I knew that I didn't want to go down that path anymore. I didn't want to be depressed anymore. My son was getting older. I wanted to be a much better father than I was, much more present. I wanted to be a better partner for everyone, a better person for everyone. And I
don't think you did treatment before. That was your first launch, right?
That was my first treatment.
Right. So you don't really have a perspective. A lot of folks try a bunch of different half-ass programs and then wind up somewhere where you're going to get launched into the real deal, which you did. You chose that. And can you just say a little bit about the experience? I have some other specific stuff I want to poke at you about here, because you have some unique life experiences, and you have some unique and what I think are salient points to make about this recovery. But what was your experience in rehab? And I thought I hear you're trying to close your story here, but which is
no, that's fine.
But we're right about there. But can you say a little bit about the surrender process in your treatment experience?
Yeah. So, towards the end of my last spree or bender, whatever you want to call it, it was apparent, this is something that I'd wanted to go to treatment for a long time, but I always blamed my business for not being able to go, shooting weddings on the weekends and having obligations to clients, having literal legal contracts in place that I had to be at a certain place on a certain day to fulfill my contract. Always kind of like was my get out of jail free card of in my mind of not going to rehab, even though I really knew I needed it, knew I wanted it. And COVID came and everything got canceled. And it just kind of created a perfect, opportunity for me to do it. So, you had told me about the last resort before, and all the, the men's work that goes out there with Braveheart and all that kind of stuff. And, so my girlfriend got in touch with them. She was an extremely big part in all this, getting me there, and you too. And so when I got there, scared shitless, obviously, didn't really want to be going, but knew that I needed to go. I knew I needed to go. I knew it was going to be good for me. I wanted to go, but I was scared. So that's the, didn't want to go part. But the last resort's amazing. I didn't, like I said before, in my first stint of sobriety, I didn't really get into the steps. The only time I would ever read the book is if I'd go to a literature meeting. That was the only time that I heard stuff out of the book. And they really, really force you to dive deep into the book there, which is, for a guy like me who's a procrastinator who will put shit off and not do it, is perfect.
Right, because that's one of the things I want to say a little bit earlier when you did the experiment of just doing meetings. Meetings is just a small part of doing recovery. The actual work of self-reflection, and when it takes, it's painful, and it takes a lot of loving support. And there's a lot of pieces to recover. It's like I've always said, 12-step recovery is 100% successful in terms of addressing addiction, if people work the program. People that say it didn't work for me did not work the program. It's a little bit of a joke. Right. But and a good treatment program is going to create a structure. You call it forced you, but it's a structure where it is really hard not to do the work.
It's impossible. So it was really good. That they give you a big fucking binder full of tasks for each step, page by page. And, a lot of it's monotonous and like, oh, why the fuck do I have to write this? But it's just to make sure that you're actually reading the shit. Yeah. And it's because it's important to absorb that and understand the disease more, and to not feel this weakness, this I'm a weak person, and understand the disease and all that good stuff that's in the book that is in there. But it was having the social anxiety that I do, and coming into a group of a bunch of random guys in a very vulnerable situation was extremely hard. But a lot of the stuff in rehab that was super beneficial to me was walking through the fears of putting myself out there, being vulnerable in front of the strangers, sharing, all that good stuff. So then the TLR presents you with opportunities to do all that if you want to. Sometimes if you're just fucking around out there, they'll force you to do it because they care about you, because they don't want to see you just slide through the recovery process and not get anything out of it. But if you're there and you really want to do it, you can get all that. And the amount of awareness that they give you too, when it comes to, starting to pray to God. When I got in there, God was something that was something that I felt had to exist just based on what I see around me in the world. Nature and all that good stuff. But last time I prayed to God was for something not bad to happen to me, or for like a snow day in like elementary school, like that was literally my experience praying to God. Just forcing myself to do that, forcing myself to get on my knees, to pray, to meditate, even if I didn't fucking like it, even if I didn't want to be doing it, eventually had a great impact, eventually, connected me with that higher power, whatever it is. I still don't know what it is. And to be aware of that at work in my life, whether it's through just something random that happens, or something that someone says to me, or just the way I feel, it started to happen. And, it just took the literal willingness and repetition to go through the actions and to start to believe it before that started happening. And before, I could never get past that. Before, I thought it was a bunch of bullshit. I would try it and be like, this is ridiculous. This is dumb. But in rehab, they really help you to get through that, because they talk about it a lot, and they normalize it.
Yep.
And that's important.
You used the term absorb. It's really a good term, because that's what we did. We absorbed alcohol and other medications for decades, right? It's going to take a little while and a particular kind of structure to absorb reality, which is, because all that other absorption brought me to everything that I was thinking was in some way or another supporting my ability to keep using or drinking or acting out. That was the whole structure, and anything that went against that was bullshit. Yeah. Right. So it takes a while to relax those muscles and look around and see, they call it a spiritual experience or whatever, but I just think it's like getting into reality. The spiritual thing is a little bit of a trick. It's like, okay, God, what do I, while I'm praying, I'm at least not thinking this crazy shit, right? It's a trick to stop my brain from killing me.
Yeah. And it's like I said, it's just a good, you feel good when you know you're doing things that are good for you. That in itself has a great effect for me especially. So, and just the amount of awareness that they give you about yourself, about why you do things, about why you were drinking, about just try to get out of self and stop being such a selfish piece of shit, and to be able to pause when you're upset and take a breath, and just the amount of that was super beneficial to me in there. And so yeah, I mean, I wish I would have done it a long time ago. I mean, I wish if I didn't have the obligations that started to come back as COVID was relinquishing and some other stuff going on, I would have stayed longer. But, eventually my self-will and my anxiety, it's like 43 days is enough. It's time to go back and take care of some other stuff. And I wish I would have done things a little bit different, because, getting out into the real world is, it's.
I think you're making even a slight, because you're on camera and talking to the world, I think you might even be making it a little lighter than it actually is. I happen to know that it's been a struggle since you got out of there. And yeah, for sure. It's you don't have to tell that whole mess, but I will. My understanding is that you're doing the deal, you're getting the meetings, but you did make a choice to slam right back into your life, and it's a really abrupt choice.
Oh God, I mean, it's so abrupt. I mean, 20 years of living one way ain't going to be corrected by 43, 60, 90 days. So yeah, I wish I would have gone to sober living, but I didn't. So this is my reality now. And, I did make it harder on myself, which I tend to like to do in life.
Well, but, you're a little bit of a hero right now, because I'm just telling you, you're up and running. This guy with a profile, with a kind of a public profile, and you're just so humble. I mean, you're like open to suggestions, and I remember you, and I keep expecting you not to be. And then it's like, whoa, who is this guy? Open to spirituality and open to suggestions about how to do anything. It wasn't how I remember you.
No, I thought I had it all. I thought I knew.
And it's very attractive. And that's the thing in recovery. We know that in order to keep it, we have to give it away. That's one of the nauseating cliches. Yep. And you're going to have that opportunity a lot, because it looks good on you, brother. It really does. And I want to honor you for letting go. We men in this, actually everybody is told be tough in some way or another. It's not just men. And surrender and vulnerability is the word of the day for if I want to grow, right? If I want to grow, and I want to grow in this life, it's natural. So it takes quite a bit. And anyway, I'm glad you're here today. Thanks for telling your story. I know that there's so much more to it, but you're kind of a radio podcast professional, you know, okay, wait a minute, time to move on to something else.
Yeah, let's move on.
How long can, actually your story is juicy though. We could, I might get you back here to tell the rest of it, but I want to kind of give you a couple of, just a couple of nudges. I read some of the things that you've written, and this whole idea of control versus surrender, right? I mean, it's not just for us crazy alcoholics. I mean, this is a topic for human beings. We know about 1% of ourselves and less than that of the universe, right? Like 0.00001. We know shit. I got a guy in one of my meetings that said, you know, I just woke up today. I have never lived today. I have zero experience with today. Why am I trying to control it? I don't know anything about it.
Right.
So, but we keep trying with this brain because we are a species that thinks that's what makes us better than the rest of the universe is this brain. And that's a little bit delusional. So anyway, I want to hear you. I'm going to read something that you wrote and then just turn you loose. All right.
Okay.
So this is the paradox of self-care. You know, it's about control versus surrender. And actually, you've already spoken to it, but actually, I didn't take the quote from your writing for that. Why don't you just respond to that for a minute, if you would?
Sure. Well, I mean, I know what I wrote, so you know, it's like like you had the paradox of self-care, of being able to put ourselves first, you know, and just surrendering to that, knowing what, like you said, surrendering to what we know needs to be done above all else. I remember when I first saw you told me that I needed to put recovery above all else, including my son, and I thought you were a fucking lunatic, because how could I put my how could I put anything above my son? And it all, you know, once I went through rehab, it all makes sense because everything goes to shit if I don't. So, but you know, it's hard because when I was deep in my addiction, I was able to put myself first a lot. When I was isolating, when I was not giving a fuck about tearing down my relationships, when I was not giving a fuck about being the best father I could be, being the best, like my clients in photography, whatever it was, I wasn't being my best. I could always put the addiction first. And now, you know, when I come out, it's tough for me to put, you know, myself first, which is weird to me. It was so easy to do that when I was just pounding liquor by myself and not giving a fuck. And now it's like, I feel the guilt. I feel the I can't put myself first. I have to mend all this stuff. People are counting on me. I have to, because you feel the guilt a lot more, obviously, when you're not, you know, medicating yourself. So it's been one of my biggest struggles is being able to do that.
And it's also, I do remember you wrote something about, and the stuff so you got to put yourself first, right? Yeah. We know that. It's the same thing. It's that other nauseating cliche about putting the mask on first on the airplane, right?
Yeah.
Before I try to save anybody else, I better make sure I have a little bit of oxygen.
Right.
Right. But one of the things for those of us that are recovering is that while we were doing our acting out in the disease, we hurt a lot of people. So it's like, oh, wait a minute, I got to apologize first. I got to fix all. I can't put myself first. I got to put everybody else first. Yeah, right. No. It's like my only chance to have good relationships with anybody is to put my recovery first. And, you know, otherwise I'm going to blow up. I'm going to blow shit up. Right. It's just how it is.
Yeah. Like how dare I tear down so many relationships for so long, disappear to rehab for 60, 90 days, and then come back out and not grovel at the feet of the people that I fucking destroyed. Like, how fucking dare I, right?
That's right.
And that's
And that's what we learn. That's what we learn in recovery. We are done groveling.
Yeah.
And we are done making anybody grovel.
Right.
Let's just stop all let's get the grovel a theme out of our lives. Let's just live our lives authentically. And, you know, as we work this program, we find that relationships calm down overall. It just takes some time because we've been firing them up for so long.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to shift a little bit to, you have, we've had a few people with a public profile on here before, but, there's a lot of people that know who Wes is from your Hard Factor show, right? And
Yeah.
and it's a bunch of crazies that whole thing, not crazies, but people that are just out there, not necessarily addicts and alcoholics, but that are living kind of a life. It's not the recovery life. Let's just say that. Let's just say that that's the world. And I bet a lot of people that listen to you probably are on that line. Are they going over the line? But they don't hear much about the solutions. So here's something you wrote. When I told the fans of the podcast where I had been, it was incredible. It was not easy telling thousands of people at once that I was an alcoholic. I needed help. Of course, the fear of being judged, the fear of appearing weak, of only seeking attention, all of that was there, especially in an environment that is pretty machismo. Is it machismo? No, it's machismo. Okay.
Machismo,
but I was blown. I don't know how to pronounce it. I've got a lot of that shit, but I don't know how to say it. But I was blown away with the support that came flowing in and the amount of people that reacted to me out of that said it was inspiring and that it was inspiring them to get their own recovery under control or get into rehab. It was super humbling and very fulfilling. You want to say something about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you're pumping up the amount of people that may know me, but it was, our audience is pretty big and it can carry to the whole network that we're in. And it was definitely scary. I mean, a lot of people will never admit that they have a problem. And that's, what you end up, next time you see them and they're underground, which is terrible. But to come out and to do that, it was one, I felt like it was something that I just needed to do. I felt like I owed it to my fans to let them know where the fuck I had been. And the guys on the podcast had covered for me. They didn't want to tell my story. They didn't want to let anyone know where I was. So, I owed it to them to come on and say where I was, but also I owed it to just the recovery, the program itself, because, that's a lot of what it is trying to help, 12-step, and helping people to get over some of that fear of being judged, and to help people come out and say, I do need help. And when you hear someone that maybe, you think would never do something like that, or maybe, oh, he seems to have his shit together, how could he, need help? And the amount of people that reached out to me and were like, man, that's exactly what I needed to hear. That is exactly like, thank you so much I've listened to that 100 times over and over again. Like I talked to one guy not too long ago. I told everyone that reached out to me, hey, if you want to talk, here's my email address. Let's set up a Zoom. I've chatted with a number of guys on Zoom. One guy reached out to me like 2:30 in the morning. I talked to him at 2:30 in the morning and he literally told me like, you're the reason I'm going to go to rehab. And I like walked him through getting into rehab. And it's like, I'm not just bragging. It's just fucking what it's all about. It's so fucking awesome to feel like I was high. I felt high helping these people. And it's so they can, these guys come from small towns. They're being worried about being judged, whatever it is. They don't have anyone around them. And just to be able to help people get over that fear, that take that first step of saying I need help is awesome. And it's something that's been, it's something that's, and it also gave me a lot of accountability, kind of like a side effect of doing that, because now I'm like kind of this sober guy, and I have people like, counting on me almost. I don't know if that's even true. That's the way I feel. I have a lot of, feel a lot of pressure, but it's just been great. And that part of the recovery has been super important to me. It's made me want to get more involved, because I mean, just being able to help one fucking person was enough, but I've had so many people reach out to me.
Yeah. And so that's a topic that I've always, it's always been a juicy one. So first of all, in recovery, we know we've got to help others, but we've got a lot of work to do before we're in the place. And you've done a lot of work, and you are in a place to be able to be what we call a good copy of the big book. The big book is the book that's used in 12-step recovery. Mm-hmm. And we want to be like it describes in there, right? Yeah. Here's one of the it's an anonymous program for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is look at this beautiful guy dressed in black. Wow, he's got it together. Now, if he goes and now he's telling everybody he got sober in AA, and tomorrow he goes and drives something off the cliff into drives off the cliff. It's not a great thing,
No.
So we don't make a big thing out of that. But there's a paradox or a catch-22 or whatever that thing is, because if I don't put it out there, how are people going to come to me and let me help them find their way to some healing? I mean, so we got to just keep talking about that and do our best to let folks know that we're here without AA is AA. It's a different thing. We're supposed to stay anonymous. It's tricky though.
Yeah. I mean, and to speak to that, like you can't keep anyone sober that doesn't want to be sober. So just I think I think always get it out there if it's going to help someone, because if you can get them in a room, if you can get them into rehab, if you can get them into the program, they then take the wheel. It doesn't matter what the fuck you do. I could fall off. I could get drunk tomorrow, but they may already have the power inside of them to not give a fuck about what I'm doing. I mean, and hopefully that's the way it works with everyone. So I like
the other thing you said about the accountability factor. It is a thing. We get some sponsees. It makes it a little more tricky. Like I remember maybe saying to you, or I've said it to a lot of folks, I said it to myself, there's been sometimes I've made some healthy choices in my life because of my daughter. Wait a minute. If it was just me, I don't give a shit enough about myself to make good choices. But I know that that's been true for you too. I think I've sort of played that card with you. Are you going to hand this shit to your son?
Right,
and the same thing is true a little bit in sponsoring. It's like, wait a minute. I think I better actually get to a meeting. I think I ought to actually do this piece of service that I've been asked to do because that's what I'm telling him to do.
Right. Exactly.
Right? So,
Yep. Exactly.
And which leads us a little bit to this thing about, we got to learn how to treat ourselves well. Wouldn't you like to be able to treat yourself well because you love yourself as much as your son? How about that?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
But in the meantime, we're kind of agitated. You and I are similar in that way. It's like, what's the next thing? And one of the things you wrote was this phrase, I am brutal with myself.
Yeah.
For some reason, that still sticks in my mind. And so I'm hopeful for you. I don't think you're quite as hard on yourself as you used to be. I think there's hope for you.
Yeah, there's a little bit of hope. I'm definitely not nearly as hopeful or hopeless. But yeah, that's a big struggle is taking it easy on yourself. When you come out and if something goes wrong or you get a little disconnected from the program or from God or whatever it is, you don't beat yourself up about it. And I'm one of those guys that was like an all or nothing thinker where once one little thing goes wrong, then everything's fucked. If I don't have, if all the decorations, one decoration on the cake is fucked up, then the whole cake sucks. Right. That's just the way that my mind, always worked. So it's important.
So you're either God or you're a piece of shit, right? Well, there's nothing in between.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, in both cases, it's kind of equally arrogant, isn't it? That I'm so bad that what? No, you're not any worse than me. What is this, a competition? It's like, no. Let's get off of that topic because here it is. It's the disease. Because if I feel like shit, I can use. I got a good reason to use. I mean, it's the disease is very. What do we say? Cunning, baffling, powerful. It will find a way to get us back there. And I need guys like you in my life that can look at me and say, hey, Bob, you're doing fine. You're doing great. And now you've got a lot of guys around you right now, Wes. Who say, wow, brother, you're doing great. And eventually you're going to catch on.
Yeah. That's another thing that I want to say about rehab is that it makes you look at your excuses a hell of a lot closer. And once you start to look at all your excuses, you can realize, or at least I did, that 99% of them were complete bullshit. And that was something that I was definitely beneficial.
Yeah. So we're gonna have you on in a year, and everybody's again, and everybody's going, wow, how gentle he is with himself.
Right. Well, maybe I'll cry.
Yeah, we'll even get him to that point. I've already seen him cry, but don't tell him I said that. All right. Say something about Braveheart. Just say something about your experience there, and how, speaking of crime, because we do a lot of grief work there, and we take a look at the underlying trauma, the things that have happened to us along the way, without blaming our addiction on trauma, because that doesn't work, right? But I know you did some really good work there. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, that was it's an intense experience for sure. When you're in the rehab facility at TLR, especially, you hear about it and then no one will tell you about it. And it's like this big mystery, and it's going to be kind of, something that not many people would maybe sign up to do. But for me, it was, I
always like to create things in the world that people run away from, as opposed to. That's the kind of product I like to create.
But once you're in it, it's super beneficial. It's to me, the biggest thing that I got out of it was walking through a lot of fear. And I know that's kind of like a big, a recurring theme in recovery for me is walking through a lot of fear. And Braveheart will help you walk through some fear. And also just being there for the other guys that are going through the same thing is super beneficial. Being a rock for some of these other guys, it really kind of kickstarts in rehab. It really brings the community together, but it also kickstarts that feeling of really helping another man get through his shit.
And you've been on staff of Braveheart, and we're going to get you back to staff some more, because we consider that work an advanced leadership training. To be the highest value of leadership for a lot of us is the ability to be vulnerable and to be present. A lot of leadership models that we're seeing in maybe in a public setting don't necessarily fit that. But around here, that's what we, like you're a powerful leader, Wes, because you're willing to speak the emotional truth, right? And people follow you anywhere. I mean, that's how it works. So I'm glad to have you. Okay, so here's a topic for you. How about this wise ass persona that we know is a character defect of some kind? It also is a defense mechanism. You and I both. I'm a theater guy. You're kind of public persona, comedy routine dude. We both have our da 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 da, right, to try to hide ourselves. And it worked really well. And the other thing is, we picked up some skills along the way while we were trying to hide behind that da da, right? Now, here's just recovery is just so full of paradox that it's a persona, it's a defense mechanism, and I need to look at that. And sometimes if I'm using it to hide my emotions, I need to take a breath and maybe speak the truth rather than make a joke, right? That's one thing. On the other hand, the big book, this book that we keep referring to, says, let me see if I have this quote here. It says, we absolutely insist on enjoying life. But the other thing it says is some people, outsiders, are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over a seemingly tragic experience out of the past. So, is there a question? Have I said a question in all of this? Here, I want to hear from you.
Yeah. Like I said before, when I first started drinking, a lot of my problem, I think, and a lot of reason I stuffed things down was because I always felt that I was just, my personality is kind of pessimistic. It's kind of cynical. I like to joke around. Nothing really offends me. I like all the worst jokes you can possibly tell me. I'll think they're funny. And that doesn't necessarily always go in line with this like higher power, AA, do the right thing kind of, community sometimes. And it's hard because, that is who I am. And that's a lot of the reason why I was drinking, is stuffing that down, thinking that people were going to judge me, thinking that people weren't going to like me.
Yeah.
And coming to being sober and kind of coming to be like, you know what, fuck it. Like, that's who I am. I love myself. I know I'm a pretty decent guy. And if I'm saying something that's funny, you know, like I think the example I sent to you was like, you know, if there's a crackhead dancing on the street, I'm going to laugh at that crackhead. I'm going to, in my mind, I'm going to be like, man, that I feel bad for that guy. Like, I hope he gets some help. I hope he figured this out. But it's also fucking funny that there's this crazy crackhead dancing in the middle of the street kind of. And I'm not going to allow myself to stuff that part of my personality down just because I have this new like higher sobriety or whatever you want to call it. Because then what I do is I'll just mind fuck myself forever.
Well, good luck with that. But I think you are fucked a little bit here. I think you're trying to talk. I bet you've already noticed moments of double clutching. Can I say this shit?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think it's John Cleese or one of those guys was in Jungian analysis. And I can't remember the details, but it was something about his lawyer. He got a lawyer to sue his Jungian analyst because he lost his sense of humor for a period of time. Because he was looking so deeply and he was like, oh my God, I can't.
He couldn't write anymore. I remember that. Yeah. Yes, that is definitely, and you know, with being on like the podcast, it's like, well, if I say this, people are going to say, aren't you supposed to be like, you know, accepting and loving of all people and all, you know, this kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, you know, like, you don't know what I'm doing on the side. I'm just here telling jokes.
That's right.
So it's definitely still something I work with. Like you say, like I've definitely clinched my ass and not said certain things because I was worried of judgment still to this day, but it's progress, right?
Hey, try being a therapist, go get a master's and listen to all that shit about being appropriate all the time. And being so careful. I mean, it's been an issue. It remains an issue, but I have an inappropriate joke I'd like to tell now. It just occurred to me. And so you can judge me. Okay, so it's a relationship joke. It's an addict joke. Okay, so this guy goes into a bar. Let me see if I have this right. The guy goes into a bar and he's trying not to drink. He's told his wife he's not drinking. He's done. He's decided he's done. And but he can't stop, and he starts drinking, right? And then he gets sick and he throws up on his shirt. And he says, "Oh, now my wife's gonna know." So the bartender says, wait a minute, I got an idea. Here, take this $20 bill. And he stuffs it in his shirt pocket, right? And it says, go home and tell your wife some guy puked on you. You were trying to help him get sober, and he puked on you. And he gave you the $20 to go get the shirt dry cleaned. So he goes home and he says, wow, what a good idea. So he goes home and he tells his wife, look, this guy threw up on me. I was trying to help him. He gave me this $20 to dry clean, and he hands the $20 to her, and she looks at it, and it's actually a $50 bill. She says, this is a $50. I knew you were lying to me. That's not a $20. It's a $50. You were drinking again. He said, no, well, he gave me the $50 because he also crapped my pants. So, all right. Do I get a 7.1 or
no? That was great.
I'm
gonna use that. I need more sober jokes in my repertoire.
Need more material, huh?
Yeah, I need more material. No, that's good. I like that. Yeah, it's I mean, it like you said, like the quote. You know, we gotta enjoy ourselves, because if we get bogged down with being too serious, that's no fun.
Well, you are a fun guy, Wes. I know there's so much more to your story, but we don't want to be here for too many hours. And
listen, I got important places to be, Bob.
Yes, you're a very important guy. Just look at you. Yeah. But anyway, this is really cool. Fun to have you on here, and I really admire you and your recovery. So here's the deal. I want people to be able to reach you for a lot of things. One thing is Wes is not just a wedding photographer, not that just being a wedding photographer is, but he takes it to an entirely different level, and he's glad to tell you about that. And so that's one thing. The other thing, he's a kind of superstar guy on the Hard Factor, and also a guy who is available to people who are ready to get sober, or at least talk about it. So there's all the things. Will you let folks know how to reach you, Wes? Yeah,
so you can follow me on Twitter at HardFactorWes. Same thing, Instagram. And then if you want to get in touch with me, the best email is hardfactorwes@barstoolsports.com. That's the email I give out to everyone who wants to, if you're, whoever you are, a young guy out there that's listening that is thinking about getting into rehab or whatever. Those are the guys that I've mostly talked to since telling people my story in the podcast. So yeah, always happy to help you guys out. So please reach out to me. And Dr. Bear, I want to thank you too, because you've been instrumental in this whole process for me. From the get-go, and I know that you put a lot of effort into me. even when we weren't in with doing our sober sessions, you reached out to me and checked in on me, and I always really appreciated that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, you're an easy dude to love, Wes. Really, it's true. So I hope you get off your back a little bit, because it's obvious to most of us that are around you. You're a good man, good dad, and doing good work. So keep it up. Thanks everybody for being here on this product of Deep Waters Recovery. This is the recovery crew. We are the recovery crew. I want to get Wes back on here a lot. He knows a lot about this podcast stuff. Let's see if we can get it, brush his ego and tell him how great he is. Maybe he'll come in, help brush up the quality of this thing.
That's it. That's the whole reason I'm here, is to get your production value up. I knew it.
That's all. That's your only value. Okay. So we have a 10-hour healing program. We think it's we like to refer to it as an advanced intensive outpatient program. I'm going to see if Nicole, our program director, is still with us here, or maybe I offended her deeply with that joke. I don't know. Are you still there, Nicole?
Still here.
All right. Would you let people know how they can reach us for the program, or any kind of support that they might need around letting go of dependency, healing trauma, or launching into a life of meaning, which is what we're.
Absolutely. We would love to hear from you. You can reach us at 512-677-7847, or email us, admin@deepwatersrecovery.com. So please reach out if you have any questions about our program, comments, or if you want to be part of the podcast. You can reach us at deepwatersrecovery.com. We post weekly blogs from our community. Our podcast comes out weekly. And follow us on all the social media sites, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Our YouTube is The Recovery Crew at Deep Waters Recovery. Again, our number, just in case you didn't hear it the first time, 512-677-7847.
Nice. All right. This is a movement. Deep Waters is a movement that is not just about crazy alcoholics like Wes and I. It's about anybody who has a challenge that, if you're struggling to be who you want to be in the world, a lot of times it has to do with unresolved trauma, even of the mild kind. So anyway, glad you joined us today, and take care of yourselves and reach out to us if you need support. You're in the deep waters now.